The Day the Earth Stood Still is remembered as one of the most important, prophetic science fiction films ever made, a movie that transformed UFO paranoia into a cautionary tale about humanity's self-destruction. But behind the serene message, the iconic robot Gort, and the quiet dignity of Klaatu, the production was filled with creative battles, studio panic, bizarre casting decisions, malfunctioning effects, and one actor who couldn't stop laughing at the movie's most legendary line. Here are 20 bizarre, unsettling, and fascinating secrets behind this sci-fi masterpiece. Secrets that prove the film's peaceful message was born from absolute chaos. Number 1. The movie was nearly killed because the studio hated its anti-American message. In 1951, America was deep in Cold War paranoia. Anything that sounded too peaceful was suspicious, especially if it warned humanity not to use nuclear weapons. When the studio first read the script, executives panicked. They said the message felt unpatriotic, dangerous, and too sympathetic to foreigners. Some even feared government backlash. The movie nearly died in committee meetings before it ever reached production. The turning point came when producer Julian Blaustein argued that the film wasn't anti-American, it was anti-suicide, warning the world about the escalating arms race. Still, the studio demanded changes, softening political lines and rewriting dialogue to avoid offending the Pentagon. Ironically, the film's plea for unity and peace is exactly what made it legendary and exactly what almost got it banned. And speaking of things the studio didn't want, the casting battle for Klaatu was even stranger. Number 2. Spencer Tracy wanted the role, but he was too famous to be an alien. The studio's dream casting for Klaatu was Hollywood legend Spencer Tracy. He loved the script and said yes immediately. The problem? His fame was a curse. Early test audiences instantly recognized Tracy's face in concept art, laughing and whispering, "Hey, that's Spencer Tracy in a spacesuit!" The director realized the entire illusion of a calm, mysterious extraterrestrial would collapse if viewers saw a megastar instead of a visitor from the cosmos. So the studio rejected its own top-choice actor, a move almost unheard of at the time. In the end, they cast Michael Rennie precisely because he was unknown. His unfamiliar face made Klaatu feel genuinely otherworldly. But Tracy wasn't the only casting disaster waiting to strike. Patricia Neal, the film's female lead, had her own emotional roller coaster to face. Number 3. Patricia Neal thought the script was a joke and couldn't stop laughing at Klaatu Barada Nikto. Patricia Neal later admitted she took the role without reading the script carefully. She assumed it was just another low-budget B-movie with flying saucers made of tin foil. When she finally saw the line she had to deliver Klaatu Barada Nikto, she burst out laughing. She thought it sounded ridiculous, like something from a children's puppet show. During early rehearsals, Neal had trouble saying the phrase without giggling, driving the director insane. But the irony? Her calm, serious delivery in the final cut became one of the most iconic lines in sci-fi history, referenced in Star Wars, Army of Darkness, and dozens of other films. And that mysterious command wasn't the only special effect challenging the production. Number 4. Gort's suit was so heavy and hot, the actor could barely stand up. The towering robot Gort shocked audiences in 1951, but behind the scenes, playing the silent sentinel was a grueling ordeal. Locke Martin, who was over 7 feet tall, was cast for his height, not because he was an actor. His suit weighed more than 70 pounds, trapping heat and restricting his movement so severely that he could barely walk. Assistants had to lift him between takes and guide him into position like a giant marionette. In some scenes, his legs buckled under the suit's weight, causing him to collapse. For action shots, the crew built multiple Gort suits, one with stiff legs for walking shots, one with flexible rubber for close-ups, and even a torso-only version for scenes where he needed to bend. But physical strain wasn't the only technical nightmare. Gort's iconic visor, the one that emits deadly beams, almost blinded multiple crew members. Number 5. The laser beam effect was created with a dangerous practical trick. Long before CGI existed, filmmakers had to use creativity and sometimes outright danger to create visual effects. For Gort's lethal eye beam, the crew built a massive studio light inside a fiberglass Gort head and blasted it straight at the camera. The heat was so intense that cinematographers had to shield themselves with welding goggles. And because the beam was too bright for film, they added a dangerous chemical flare in post-production, combining practical light with optical trickery. One effects artist later admitted, "If we had made one wrong adjustment, we could have burned the film or someone's face." But while the effects team risked injury, the U.S. military had their own issues with the movie. Number 6. The U.S. Army refused to help because of the UFO panic of the 1,950 seconds. In the early 50 seconds, the Air Force and Army were terrified of UFO hysteria. They believed a major Hollywood film about an alien visitor landing in Washington, D.C. would fuel public anxiety or worse, encourage conspiracy theories. The studio begged for cooperation. Soldiers, vehicles, props. The Army said absolutely not. They even advised the Pentagon to stay away from the film. So the production had to turn to the National Guard, who happily stepped in and provided manpower, uniforms, and equipment. The Pentagon's refusal ironically made the film look more authentic. The National Guard troops acted more naturally than Hollywood extras. But government resistance didn't end there. Even the robot had a political story hidden behind his blank expression. Number 7. Gort was designed as a warning against nuclear weapons. The towering robot wasn't meant to be a monster, he was a metaphor. Producer Julian Blaustein insisted that Gort represent the terrifying logic of nuclear retaliation. Powerful, emotionless, and unstoppable once activated. He was the embodiment of mutually assured destruction decades before that term existed. Klaatu's peaceful message wasn't enough. The filmmakers wanted audiences to feel fear when they saw Gort. That fear was intentional, a moral warning disguised as a sci-fi creature feature. But Gort wasn't the only thing in the film with deep symbolism. Even the spaceship's design came from a surprisingly artistic source. Number 8. The spaceship was modeled after modern art, not real science. Instead of basing Klaatu's ship on technical diagrams or scientific theories, the designers turned to abstract art. They wanted the craft to feel serene, smooth, and almost spiritual, the opposite of the threatening, riveted, clunky UFOs seen in other 1,950 seconds films. Inspired by modern sculptors like Brancusi, the team created a sleek, seamless surface free of visible panels or screws. Crew members joked that it looked like a giant bar of soap, but audiences instantly recognized it as something new, an elegant vision of extraterrestrial technology that contrasted sharply with Cold War fear. But inside the ship, a very different kind of nightmare played out, one involving a child actor and a camera trick that nearly went wrong. Number 9. Bobby's scenes with Klaatu required optical tricks that almost failed on set. Because Michael Rennie Klaatu was tall and Lock Martin Gort was even taller, the director wanted Bobby, the child protagonist, to look small and vulnerable next to them. To achieve this contrast, they used forced perspective tricks, ramps, and oversized set pieces. But during one scene inside the spaceship, the floor platform malfunctioned, creating a visible seam that ruined the illusion. Crew members scrambled to fix it as the child actor, Billy Gray, waited nervously. This delay lasted hours, and when filming resumed, the camera alignment was slightly off, causing distortion. The editors had to salvage the footage frame by frame. Today, viewers just see a clean, seamless sci-fi moment, unaware that it was almost cut entirely. And the film's most ambitious effect was still ahead. Number 10. The stood still sequence took so long to film that the crew thought it would be cut. The moment when electricity stops across Earth, watches freeze, cars stall, machinery dies is the heart of the film. But shooting it was almost impossible. The crew had to coordinate dozens of practical effects. Stuck steering wheels, stalled engines, spinning machinery stopping mid-motion. Some shots took days to set up. Others failed and had to be refilmed repeatedly. The studio warned director Robert Wise that the sequence was too ambitious for the budget. Wise refused to cut it. He insisted that the world stopping was the emotional and thematic center of the story, the shock that wakes humanity up. In the end, the sequence took nearly 2 full weeks to complete, an eternity for a 1,950 seconds production. But it paid off. That eerie silence, that frozen moment in time, became the film's defining image. And the chaos behind it was only a taste of the drama still to come. Number 11. Michael Rennie stayed in alien mode off-camera, and it terrified the crew. Michael Rennie understood that Klaatu wasn't just a man from another planet, he was a symbol of calm, almost divine rationality. To maintain that presence, Rennie embraced a subtle form of method acting. He avoided small talk, limited his facial expressions, and moved with deliberate, almost unnatural restraint, even during breaks. Crew members joked that he floated instead of walked. Some found it inspiring. Others found it unsettling, including Billy Gray, the young actor who played Bobby. Gray later recalled being intimidated by Rennie's icy stillness. He didn't blink much. As a kid, that was spooky. Rennie's strange, distant composure ended up elevating the character. Klaatu felt like an outsider, not because of makeup or effects, but because Rennie behaved like someone who didn't entirely belong in the human world. And that eerie presence would play an unexpected role in one of the film's most important scenes. Number 12. The government arrival scene caused real panic in Washington, D.C. When Klaatu's saucer lands near the Washington Monument, tanks roll in, soldiers swarm the area, and tension fills the air. But here's the crazy part. When the crew filmed these shots near real government buildings, they forgot to notify residents. The sight of trucks, troops, and flashing lights startled nearby civilians, some of whom genuinely believed a national emergency was unfolding. A few even phoned local authorities asking if Washington was under attack. The studio had to reassure officials that the film crew wasn't recreating a hostile invasion. This bizarre misunderstanding only added to the movie's legend. In a time when UFO sightings filled newspapers, capturing real fear, even unintentionally, made the film feel eerily authentic. But authenticity was a double-edged sword, especially for the actor trapped inside the Gort suit. Number 13. Lock Martin was so weak he could barely lift anyone, forcing multiple movie tricks. Lock Martin looked like a towering giant as Gort, but in reality he was physically fragile. He worked as an usher, not an athlete, and suffered from chronic health issues that made it nearly impossible for him to lift heavy objects, including Patricia Neal and Michael Rennie. When the script called for Gort to carry Helen or Klaatu, the director panicked. Martin couldn't do it. The solution? Hollywood magic. For shots where Gort carries Neal, a lightweight dummy was substituted. For Rennie, a hidden dolly supported him as operators wheeled him along the set, while Martin simply pretended to lift. In close-ups, only Martin's arms entered the frame, never his full body. Viewers saw strength. Behind the scenes, the crew saw carefully disguised weakness, proving once again that the most imposing character in the film was held together by camera angles and clever editing. But even the camera couldn't disguise the film's most controversial emotional beat. Number 14. Klaatu's death scene sparked an on-set moral argument. When Klaatu is shot outside the boarding house, his fall was designed to shock audiences not with gore, but with a philosophical punch. Yet the scene caused a heated debate among the filmmakers. Some crew members argued that a Christ-like alien dying at the hands of fearful humans was too on the nose, too symbolic, too provocative for Cold War America. Others claimed the moment was essential, the heart of the movie's warning. Michael Rennie himself insisted the death scene must feel calm, not dramatic. He dies with disappointment, not anger, he said. After several takes that looked too theatrical, Rennie delivered the version now immortalized on screen, a quiet collapse, as if humanity's violence physically weighed on him. The moral debate ended, but the studio wasn't done arguing, and their next fight was over a surprisingly tiny detail that almost derailed the final message of the film. Number 15. The famous line, Klaatu Barada Nikto, was invented on the spot, and no one truly knows what it means. The phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto is one of the most iconic pieces of sci-fi language ever spoken, referenced in Star Wars, Evil Dead, Star Trek, and countless parodies. But here's the secret, it was improvised. The director, Robert Wise, wanted a command that sounded alien, but also soothing, authoritative, but mysterious. None of the early attempts worked. They sounded silly or childish. Finally, screenwriter Edmund North, frustrated, tired, and running out of time, scribbled a phrase without meaning it to be literal language. It was sound, not syntax. Patricia Neal rehearsed it several times and delivered it flawlessly, but even she didn't know what it translated to, and she wasn't alone. To this day, no official translation exists. Wise later said the phrase simply meant, "Don't destroy the world, don't attack, help Klaatu." Is taking this very actions, reld. But even he admitted the meaning shifts depending on who you ask. That ambiguity became part of the film's mystique, a phrase whispered across decades, passed into pop culture, and used in moments of homage, comedy, and reverence. And that mystique would become even more essential as the film approached its final, most complicated sequence. By the final weeks of filming, the production had evolved into something larger than a typical sci-fi picture. Cast and crew were exhausted, the studio was anxious, and the message of the film began to weigh heavily on everyone involved. The shoot had become a strange fusion of artistry, tension, mistakes, and accidental genius, and the last 5 facts reveal just how fragile and unpredictable the creation of this legendary film truly was. Number 16. The resurrection scene broke religious rules Hollywood was terrified to violate. Klaatu's resurrection inside the spaceship is one of the most striking scenes in early science fiction, but behind the scenes it triggered panic in the studio's legal department. Any depiction resembling the resurrection of Christ risked offending religious groups, a major commercial threat in the 1950 seconds. The Catholic Legion of Decency, which could ban or condemn films, closely monitored anything with spiritual symbolism. When early storyboards showed Klaatu rising from the dead, bathed in light, executives feared backlash. The director rewrote the scene carefully. Klaatu must clarify he cannot truly resurrect, he can only use advanced technology to extend life temporarily. Even then, they kept Rennie's posture controlled, avoiding any imagery that might visually echo Jesus rising from the tomb. The irony? Instead of backlash, the scene became the emotional heart of the movie, a moment that elevated Klaatu from a visitor to a philosophical messenger. And his message delivered an even bigger challenge. Number 17, Klaatu's final speech nearly got cut because the studio thought it was too smart. The film's climax features one of the most morally charged monologues in sci-fi history. Klaatu warns humanity that if they continue down a path of aggression, a galactic police force will intervene decisively. The speech is eloquent, urgent, and deeply political. Too political, according to some executives. They feared audiences wouldn't understand it. They worried it would anger pro-military conservatives. And they thought the ending lacked the excitement of typical alien invasion films. There were real discussions about deleting the entire speech and replacing it with a simpler, more generic finale, something safer. Robert Wise fought back. He argued that the entire movie existed solely to deliver this message, and removing it would hollow out the story. He refused to shoot an alternate ending. Against all odds, Wise won. And Klaatu's speech, once viewed as too intellectual and risky, became the film's most quoted moment, studied in classrooms, referenced in philosophy courses, and praised by critics as one of the bravest endings in Hollywood sci-fi. But not everything about that ending was smooth. In fact, parts of it very nearly fell apart on set. Number 18. The giant crowd shot at the saucer was a cinematic trick the studio refused to pay for extras. The film's finale shows a massive crowd gathered around Klaatu's saucer as he prepares to leave Earth. But the studio, already stretched thin financially, refused to approve hundreds of paid extras. They told the director, "We can give you 20 people, make it look like thousands." Faced with the impossible, cinematographer Leo Tover and Robert Wise engineered a clever trick. They filmed the same handful of extras from multiple angles, repositioning them over and over, altering hats and coats, and placing them in slightly different formations. By layering these shots and using strategic camera movements, they made a tiny group look like a vast international assembly. Wise later joked, "Those 20 people worked harder than a stadium crowd." Most viewers never noticed the deception, a testament to the creativity that held the film together. But behind the ingenuity was a creeping sense that the production was spiraling out of control, especially when one prop caused unexpected trouble. Number 19. Gort's spaceship door malfunctioned so badly they had to rewrite the scene. One of the film's most iconic images is the seamless sliding door on Klaatu's ship, a smooth, futuristic movement unheard of in 1950 cinema. But here's the twist. The door almost never worked. The mechanism constantly jammed, stuck, or opened crookedly. During the finale, when Gort emerges to retrieve Klaatu's body, the door broke down repeatedly, delaying shooting for hours. The malfunction was so persistent that the effects team suggested rewriting the moment so the door could remain open throughout the entire sequence. Wise refused, insisting that the clean opening was a crucial visual symbol, the calm, effortless technology of a civilization beyond humanity's violence. The team rebuilt the mechanism overnight. It still malfunctioned. In the final edit, every shot of the door opening is the result of carefully chosen footage, the only moments when the mechanism actually worked. The illusion lives forever. But the truth is that behind the scenes, the future was held together with wires, hope, and glue. And strangely, that fragility mirrored the fate of the film itself. Number 20. The film was expected to fail, and then became one of the most influential sci-fi movies ever made. When The Day the Earth Stood Still premiered, the studio had low expectations. They thought it was too philosophical, too slow, too moralistic, and lacking the thrills that audiences demanded. Executives predicted it would disappear quietly. But something extraordinary happened. Critics praised its intelligence. Scholars admired its depth, scientists applauded its anti-nuclear message, and audiences weary of Cold War anxiety embraced the idea of an alien messenger who wasn't here to invade but to warn. Over the decades, the film influenced generations of directors Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, George Lucas, Scott Derrickson, and inspired countless sci-fi classics centered not on war, but on reflection. Its imagery, themes, and iconic lines echo through cinema history. What began as a risky, nearly sabotaged production became a timeless warning, a film that forced humanity to look inward and finally ask the question Klaatu brought from the stars. What future are? Which of these chilling behind-the-scenes secrets surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're always watching the skies with you. If you enjoyed this journey into vintage sci-fi history, remember to like, subscribe, and share for more stories from the golden age of imagination. And until next time, keep watching the skies and keep listening for Klaatu. We choosing?